Welcome back to Horn Takes, your Texas football and baseball talk destination. I am Sean Redfern. It is Friday Eve. We are excited about that. We've got a special celebrity guest for you guys today. We've got Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered on today. We'll also do round two of Trace Texas topics. We usually do that in one show. It's usually on Monday or Tuesday, usually Tuesday. But this week we had so many guests on that we decided to split it up, do it over 3 different shows. There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And that includes the vernacular you use when you describe the annual game between Texas and Below U at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. There's a right way to call that game, and there's a wrong way to call that game. And a lot of y'all calling that game the wrong thing. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. You can listen to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeart Podcast, Spotify Podcast. You can also find all the podcast episodes on horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Check it out. We got a chance to sit down with Chris Phillips. We haven't sat down with Chris Phillips in a long, long time, folks. Good friend of ours, formerly of the Spurs Up show. Now he is the leader of the SEC Unfiltered crew. And we sat down to talk all about the new look SEC in 2024 and a little bit about the Red River Shootout. I hope you guys enjoy it. Pleasure to have you on, Chris. It's been a while. Thanks for taking the time today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, excited to talk some Longhorns, some SEC. It's been a great season to this point. Obviously, at the time of us speaking this previous weekend, I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama to watch the game of the year. I feel confident in saying we'll probably get a couple more of those as we go throughout the season. But I've been going to a different stop every week. The plan is to come to Texas later in the season. That Texas-Kentucky game is the one we have circled. But the season's been great at this point, man. Always a pleasure to chat with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. You guys can check Chris and his gang out on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. They're SEC Unfiltered. They got a nice website. I checked that out the other day, SECunfiltered.com, where they put up a lot of written stories and just keep you plugged into what they're doing on all the socials. So check them out there. We mentioned a big team of contributors. I think mostly, though, it's what, Dave Shoemate and Cole Thompson on the
Yeah,
video side of it.
Yeah, those are my main guys, Dave and Cole. They do a great job. Those guys do a great job. Again, we just talk all things SEC football, baseball, basketball. We also have some others that join us on the live show efforts we do with Texas Sports Unfiltered. Guys like Lucas Hill, Dimitri Ravanas, Mike Gillespie, and then we've got a team of writers, about 6 or 8 guys that are writing articles for us as well. So, myself, Dave, and Cole, I would say, are kind of the 3 amigos leading the charge. But yeah, it's the biggest blessing I think of the SEC Unfiltered venture has been the fact I've been able to surround myself with great people. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. I know you guys do great content. For sure, check those guys out. Real quick before we get started, we were just talking about the hurricane deal when we jumped on. I know I've seen some posts from your guys about hurricane relief efforts. Talk to the guys real quick about what they can do to help out with that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues you can take. The one guy that we republished was Bo Camaro at Bo Camaro on X, who's coming down to North Carolina. They were taking donations for supplies and what have you. I mean, there's also a lot. If you go to Beach Mountain, North Carolina's website or any social media, so it's BEECH Mountain, North Carolina. Also Boone, North Carolina, Asheville. There's going to be a lot of different ways that you can donate, you can contribute. We've done some different things as well. And we're actually potentially right now working on collabing with a Tennessee content creator on some merchandise that'll go back to donating to those efforts. But definitely at minimum, if you do nothing else, just keep the folks of, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, especially too, but Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee in your thoughts and prayers. The Appalachian seems to get forgotten. That's an area that, Sean, I love dearly, and I go up there, pretty frequently, whether it be to hike or to fish or to ski or, I was in Boone, North Carolina a couple weeks ago watching Appalachian State take on South Alabama. So it's a beautiful part of the country. It's crazy to think that this could have happened, and it's devastating, and it's honestly heartbreaking to see, some of the videos and the way folks have been affected. So, even if you just keep people in your thoughts and prayers, man, that's more than doing nothing. And, I know the folks up there will get through it, but anybody that's experienced the effects of a hurricane like that. I mean, I've lost power, but that minor inconvenience is nothing compared to some folks who have literally lost, their entire homes or things they've worked for a while. So, Whatever you can do to help is appreciated, but at minimum, like I said, just keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers because it's heartbreaking to see what's happened to some of those small mountain towns and especially Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee.
Absolutely. If you send me some of that stuff, I'll get it on banners when I throw the
Yeah,
show up. That way people can see it. All
you.
right, man. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey before we get into SEC football. I haven't known you that long, but I knew you back when you were Spurs up. I'm sure there was a beginning to all this journey for you. Talk to us about the journey from the beginning of this to Spurs up and now to SEC Unfiltered. What was all that like for you?
Yeah, Sean, I'll try to give you the long story as short as possible because we could go on for hours and hours and hours. It's kind of like how do you encapsulate what's nearly an 8-year journey into about a 5-minute spiel, if you will. But yeah, man, it started in January of 2017. That was when I started creating content in any capacity. I actually was doing it for a smaller entity named Armchair All Americans, and they were looking for a South Carolina contributor for their South Carolina page. The page had 30 followers on Twitter, no Instagram, no Facebook. And they essentially said, hey, all we're asking for is 2 articles per week, but we're going to give you full creative control, whatever you want to do. And I really just took it and hit the ground running, man. I was working in the corporate world at the time in Charlotte, North Carolina. Wasn't fulfilled, didn't love that. Always had an interest in the media space, podcasts, social media, what have you. Always liked it, but just didn't really know how to start. So when I got that opportunity, January 2017, hit the ground running, man. And it was really from there just a slow grind on social media. We started the podcast April of 2017. It took us a full year to gain 1,000 followers on Twitter. At that time, we're not even putting an emphasis on Instagram and Facebook. Don't even have an Instagram or Facebook page. So it took us a year to get to 1,000 followers. Then a year from then went from 1,000 to 4,000. Then a year from then went from 4,000 to 10,000. And again, this is all on Twitter. So it was a slow grind, showing up every single day, creating content at scale and staying consistent. Got the LLC for the business, the Spurs Up Show, which was my previous venture in November of 2018. And then August of 2019, moved to Columbia, South Carolina to pursue it full time. From there, we had a lot of successes. I grew and scaled exponentially, Sean. Obviously, when you and I chatted, we were in the midst of that. But the wheels for me were always turning, Sean. Where I'm always someone where I'm always trying to evolve and grow and scale. And I have entrepreneurial goals, same as I have any other type of goals. So, you know, I would think to myself, in 10, 15, 20 years, am I still going to be doing the same thing? Am I still going to be talking about the same team? And yes, I was born and raised a South Carolina fan, but again, also had that entrepreneurial spirit and drive and, willing to do whatever was necessary for business. So I wasn't closed minded to the idea of expanding just beyond that space. And, funny story, Sean, I'll say this because I'm headed there in a couple weeks for the first time for a game. I went to Rocky Top, Knoxville, Tennessee, back in March of 2022 with a couple buddies of mine. We went for a baseball series, and they got a bunch of friends that are Tennessee fans. And the reception I got from those guys when they found out what it was I was doing, and they thought the content was great, the merchandise was great. Man, you should do a Tennessee version of this. This is really cool. That was one of those moments, Sean, where it was like it clicked the light bulb on, and the gears really started turning in regards to my mind, my thought process, thinking to myself, if this can work for one team and one fan base, like my style and the way I create content, why can't it work for at that time 13 other fan bases? And now, of course, we now know 15 other fan bases with Texas and OU. So, that happened in 2022, but it wasn't until obviously December of 2023 we finally executed on that and went from the Spurs Up Show Gamecock focused brand to SEC Unfiltered, a fully encompassing SEC entity, making content in a very, very similar manner, Sean, but just doing it regarding the entire SEC and delivering it from a purely unbiased. You would never know who I'm a fan of. You tune into our content, which I'm proud to say. You would never know who Dave Shoemate and Cole Thompson are fans of, which is a great thing. And again, we try to just be fair and we're just guys that love talking ball and talking all things SEC. So it's been a blast, man. I mean, I can tell you with respect to my previous venture, which it was a lot of fun. I've never had so much fun as a content creator, as an entrepreneur since we launched SEC Unfiltered. The opportunity, Sean, to meet so many different people. It's opened doors, obviously, that we would have had access to. And, right now, for example, I'm touring the entire SEC, going to a different game every week, and just got to witness Bama, Georgia in person in Tuscaloosa, like having experiences that, I went to the College World Series over the summer, like these once in a lifetime or just these experiences you don't get all the time. So It's been incredible, man. I always say the joys in the journey. I'm enjoying every step of the way. So excited for what's next. It's really it really fires me up that we're only entering, as we enter the month of October, we're only entering month 10 of this entity's existence. And I'd like to think we've made some pretty big strides along the way and impacted a lot of folks in a positive manner. I'm just excited to see where this thing takes us moving forward.
Yeah, man, it's been cool to watch the journey too. I remember seeing you on TikTok and being like, "Oh, this is cool. This dude's kind of doing the same thing I am." And then we started talking a little bit, and then all of a sudden, I started seeing all this SEC unfiltered stuff, and I was like, "Wait a second, that's Chris. Did he change?" And that's when I reached out. You probably remember I sent you a text, man. Are you SEC unfiltered now? And I thought that was cool, man. So yeah, it's been cool to watch you grow your deal uh and man, it really is great content. So if you guys don't know about SEC Unfiltered, definitely get out there and check them out. It's really good stuff. Chris, we're 2 weeks into the SEC, the new look SEC schedule. About 2 weeks. I don't know. Someone may have played before that. But what stands out to you about the SEC so far in 2024?
Well, Sean, I think you got to start with the parity. I mean, it's every single week we've kind of had a wacky off the wall result, even if it was, not, a full on upset. But I mean, Vandy hanging with Missouri in double overtime. We've had Kentucky obviously beating Ole Miss. What South Carolina did to Kentucky at their place was a major surprise. Gamecocks almost beating LSU on their home field. We've had surprising results each and every single week. Arkansas going to Auburn, you could argue, was a little bit of an upset. We were actually at that game. Um, I think thus far, the teams we thought were going to be good are really good. Maybe outside of Ole Miss right now, because I don't think anybody saw them losing that game to Kentucky. But, I think we thought those big four at the top, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia, I think we all expected them to be pretty good. Now, I don't know if some folks were as high on Tennessee as say I was. I'm not really surprised by what the Vols are doing, but there are some out there that are. At this point, Sean, and I don't know how it'll be received, but it is what it is. And this will all be sorted out, by the way. We're going to play round robin in the month of October. These teams are going to play each other. Everybody's going to get an opportunity to prove who they are. I just saw them play, Sean. For my money, Alabama's the best team in college football at this moment. I think they have the best player in college football with Jalen Milroe. They've probably got the most electric wide receiver that I've ever seen in Ryan Williams. I mean, the dude is a specimen. Now, again, it's one game, but they by far got the best win in college football to this point, which is over the Georgia Bulldogs. And the way they did it in the first half, too. Again, they might have the most explosive offense in the country. Defensively, I think they're still working through some things in the secondary, but that Alabama team, I would put them up against anybody in the country. I have been impressed very mightily with Texas, obviously. Arch Manning filling in for Quinn being out. I think Arch has been as expected. The guy looks like a starter. Would obviously be starting, I think, at any other SEC school. You're going to get Quinn back for Red River, but he's obviously steadied the ship. And Texas looked really good in that win against Michigan, too. And again, they're going to get their opportunity, right? They're going to take on OU and Red River, handle your business, but you got that game against Georgia. Like, there's going to be moments where Texas, we have this argument of 1-2, whatever. There's going to be moments where Texas can ascend to that and separate themselves and be that clear-cut number one team. But, I really think just the middle of the league, Sean, it's as unpredictable as ever. And I think a lot of that is transfer portal. And also, too, in the grand scheme of things in college football, Sean, there's not that one team that's really separated themselves. Because even Bama, I say what I say about Bama, they've had bad quarters. They've played bad games. I mean, South Florida, that game is close going to the fourth quarter, and they blow them out, score 28 points. They've also had really, really good moments, but I don't think there's anybody out there that's just looked unbeatable, right, or has no flaws. I mean, even Texas against Mississippi State was a little sluggish. Like, there's been moments for everyone, and I think a lot of the reason, Sean, is transfer portal. It makes it even more unpredictable. I think teams are taking longer to find their identity, and certainly that's the case in the SEC. Like, again, the middle of the pack with teams like Oklahoma, A&M, South Carolina, Kentucky. Even this year, you could almost throw Vanderbilt in that mix. Where it's like Arkansas. There are really dangerous teams in this league that they don't stack up to the top of the conference, but they're not teams you look forward to playing, right? Because it's just it's going to be a battle. It's going to be an all-out dogfight, and I guess that speaks to the depth of the conference. But now, certainly, man, the first month of the season delivered. And the last thing I'll say, Sean, is all the people that thought that an expanded college football playoff would take away from what the games mean and how big they are. I certainly didn't feel that on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. I always thought that was a silly argument. If you say the games don't matter, my response to you is simply, to who? because they still matter to a whole heck of a lot of people anytime you lace them up on a Saturday.
Yeah, I think that whole way of thinking and in the whole way of thinking about the top 25 needing to be stagnant so much is just old school BCS thinking. There's really no reason why the polls shouldn't change almost every week, unless one team, like you said, just goes out and separates themselves and just dominates everybody. The polls really shouldn't say stagnant. They should change. We should see movement every week. The polls should reflect how that team played that week, and not just, oh, they were number one at the beginning of the season. They still haven't lost a game, so we're going to keep them at number one. We don't need that anymore because we don't have the BCS. We have a 12-team playoff. And so I think it's really exciting. And I got to tell you, I've been to Tuscaloosa. Was that your first time to Tuscaloosa?
That was my first time ever. I don't think it'll get any better than that, I can tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably went to the greatest game that you'll ever see in Tuscaloosa for sure. You might go for 20 more years, and that may be the best one. That game had a huge sort of playoff feel to me, just sitting at the house and watching it. Back to your point, the game's not mattering. That game absolutely mattered. I thought it was unbelievable how Georgia spotted Alabama, that 30-7 halftime lead. Just looked terrible. Couldn't do anything. And I'm not taking anything from Bama. Bama absolutely took that and made it theirs. And then they come roaring back with 27 points in the second half to take the lead late in that game. And a lot of teams might sit there and go, man, it's easy to get down on yourself. You lead the entire game. You had such a big lead. Alabama does none of this. They go right back down the field, hitting phenom wide receiver Ryan Williams. You already talked about him. That dude is insane. And they just go take it right back from Georgia. So really outstanding. It reminded me a lot, to be honest, not the score differential, but just kind of like the excitement and the just punch after punch after punch of the 2005 national championship game between Texas and USC. It was one of those types of games. There's probably been several of those types of games in recent history, but I obviously remember that one very well. You were at this one, so it makes sense that those stick out to us. SEC tour, new in 2024, right?
Yeah, it's a brand new thing. Yeah, it's been a dream for quite a while. My previous venture, I only had one destination to really worry about. I was going to the Columbia and was doing watch parties for road games. So never, you'd be astonished. You'd be astonished, Sean, the amount of venues that I have not been to. I mean, I haven't been to the majority of them. So, went to Auburn for the first time, Alabama for the first time, Florida for the first time. So going to Arkansas this weekend for the first time. I mean, most all of these, I have never been to. So, the best part's been the people. The people have been so welcoming and it's been a lot of fun meeting new folks and linking up with some people that obviously you talk with on social media or whatever, or media folks. So it's been great, man. The people, they really do truly make the experiences, and I know that's only going to continue. So, yeah, we've got Fayetteville on our sites this weekend, Baton Rouge the following weekend, Rocky Top the following, and after that, we'll see. But Texas and Kentucky, that's going to be our stop in Austin later this season. The week prior, actually, to the Texas A&M game.
Yeah, and you talked earlier, I believe it was back in the summer, you were doing kind of a series on each team's sort of 3-game season defining set of games. And you mentioned that Arkansas game for Texas, that Kentucky game, and that Texas A&M game. And you got a whole lot of pushback from a whole lot of people, mostly Texas fans. And I was right there with you. To me, that's got crap game written all over it. You've got Arkansas on in one bun, you got Kentucky sandwiched in the middle, and then you got Texas A&M on the other side. Two rivalries on the outside of a game like Kentucky with a team like, and I think Kentucky's even more dangerous than I thought they would be. They sure seemed like it early this season. So that was absolutely a really great, insightful call by you. And I like I said, I couldn't find anything wrong with that, but a lot of guys just really couldn't deal with it. How's that been for you, man? I know the Gamecocks get after you every once in a while, but how has it been like now you piss off everybody?
Well, Sean, I would say this: when you cover South Carolina, you develop rhino skin. I haven't caught it worse. I haven't caught it worse from anybody else than I caught it in my years with the Gamecocks. But no, it's been great, man. It's been great, honestly. I always say the beauty's in the banter. So, and I would say 99% of the time the banter is friendly and just arguing about sports, and that's what we're here to do, man. I mean, that's what makes it fun. So, when I post something like that, for example, key 3-game stretch. Listen, I'm not saying I'm right. That's just my opinion. And if you have a different opinion on a 3-game stretch, then so be But it's been fun, man. I mean, I always say this, Sean. I'm just glad people care. I'm glad people, want to go back and forth. For example, when I dropped my game by game predictions over the summer for Texas, and I had them going 11-1, but losing to Texas A&M at the end of the year, there were
Yeah,
obviously a lot of Texas fans that were very conflicted on that prediction. On one hand, 11-1. On the other, a loss to the Aggies. So it makes for really fun conversation, man. Really fun banter, and man, I thoroughly enjoy it, man. I'd much prefer that than people not caring at all what we have to say.
yeah, that's true, man. I get beat up pretty bad sometimes on some of the Texas boards with some of my sort of. I try to even be, kind of even killed about the Longhorns. There's a huge fan side of me. Then there's also this side of me that thinks, well, we're not the best at everything. We got to get better in places, and a lot of people don't like that too much.
Yeah,
But it is
I
what
will
it
say.
is.
I will say this, Sean, to your point. I would say don't take it too hard because I think one thing I've learned too is when you're covering one team, and people sort of fairly or unfairly, even though you're an independent content creator, your subject matter for you is Texas, for me was South Carolina, and you're not affiliated with them in any way, but you are. People associate you with the school, and I just think that they take what you have to say a lot more personally. I think you and I, Sean, could have the exact same opinion, but they're going to take what I have to say a little bit less personally because I don't have that burnt orange in my logo. I'm not representing the horns necessarily. In my business. So listen, there's pros and cons to both sides. I've felt both, but certainly it's nice, not always being in the eye of the storm. And I'll leave it at that.
That's fair enough. Let's jump to something a little more fun to talk about. So obviously, you've talked. I saw one of your videos this morning. You talked about four teams still undefeated in the SEC. Which ones you think has the best opportunity to go undefeated throughout the rest of the season? And I think your pick on that makes sense. Who do you think are the two teams that wind up in the SEC championship this year?
That's a great question. I feel like we're on a crash course for Alabama, Texas at this point. I will firmly put Texas in there for sure. I mean, right now the other team I've got to go with is Alabama. Because I just think winning that game against Georgia and the other pick for me. You asked me this question last week, Sean. I probably am going Ole Miss, but with their loss to Kentucky, I mean, I don't see them not losing another game, most likely. We'll see what they do. I mean, they started off with South Carolina this weekend. They got to bounce back in a big way and make a statement. But I don't know how I can sit here and confidently say, despite that, I'm throwing Ole Miss in the mix. So, listen, right now, well, Sean, I'll change my answer. Texas is in for me. Texas is in. You mentioned the clip that I posted. Um, I would put money on it that no SEC team goes undefeated. I think Texas has the best shot. I do. I think the schedule is most workable. The SEC is just so crazy this year. It's hard to fathom anybody being unblemished. Like even before the season, I didn't have anybody going through this season unblemished. You know who I think is somebody we need to be talking about more and more for the SEC title is Tennessee. Because I think Tennessee can, and before the season, I picked them to do so. I think Tennessee can beat Alabama at home. I really do. So I could see there being kind of this log jam between Tennessee, Bama, and Georgia right there for the next team to play Texas. Um, do not be surprised if it's the Vols. I think it's really easy to say right now that it's Texas, Bama. That would be a really fun, intriguing matchup, obviously, because of what happened last year in Tuscaloosa. You know that Jalen Milroe wants that revenge game or that opportunity, at least at revenge. But I'd probably go right now. It's either Bama or Tennessee. Gun to head, I'll say that gun to head, I'll probably say that it's Alabama, but I do not be surprised at all if it's the Vols.
Yeah, the Vols have gotten a lot better on defense, and they're equipped to be in a shootout with just about anybody on the planet. So I think you're right. I think the problem with the Vols right now is Texas has played such a big out of conference opponent, and Alabama's played such a big SEC game early in the season. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Tennessee's win in Norman, just not the same level of hype going into that game, I don't think, as there was for those other two games. They'll get their opportunity. Like you said, everybody's going to get an opportunity to prove what they can do. Let's talk Red River Shootout just a minute. We're coming up 2 weeks away from the Red River Shootout. First Red River Shootout for Oklahoma and Texas as SEC teams. Texas passed a big test earlier this season going on the road in Ann Arbor. Got a nice win up there. Oklahoma struggled pretty bad offensively against Tennessee. Give us your thoughts on this 2024 version of the Red River Shootout. How do you think this one plays out in 2 weeks?
Yeah, Sean, first things first, really excited to take this game in. I mean, admittedly, it's a game I've always paid attention to, but I have not watched it with the intensity that I will watch it this year for obvious reasons, right? So really excited to take that in and talk to you guys all during the week, next week, or whenever this drops, the week of Red River and really get a feel and a vibe on just what the rivalry means and the bad blood on both sides, because obviously there is much of it. I mean, Sean, it's a game Texas should win. You want my honest opinion? Like listen, I learned the phrase "Sooner Magic" over the last couple of days. I was informed of that by Oklahoma fans after their big win over Auburn. But Oklahoma's got their own issues. I mean, number one, they got to get healthy. Is first off. Number two, they got to figure out what they're getting out of Michael Hawkins Jr. and what they're getting out of the quarterback position. I think Oklahoma's got the defense to hang with anybody, and that includes Texas. Also, the dynamic of Quinn Ewers returning for this game. Is there any sort of rust, or has he got to dust off the cobwebs a little bit? I don't think that should be a problem, but you never know when you've been out for a few weeks and you've got Arch Manning waiting in the wings. And is there any type of leash? What is that like? Again, I think this is Quinn's football team, but hey, listen, media will be media and fans will be fans, and people will be clamoring for him if Quinn starts out slow. It's just the reality. But again, I look at this one, Sean. I know this rivalry is anything but like I know that Texas fans will be nervous going into the game, as will OU fans, but Texas fans especially, because if OU loses, well, you're expected to lose. Texas has got they've got a lot right on this ball game, especially after last year wanting to get revenge. Again, I look at the game, Sean. All that being said, I do think it's a game Texas should win, but I just can't wait to take it in and kind of study the nuances of it, and because this is a game where it's just you kind of throw the record books out. I know that's such a cliche, but throw the record books out, and whoever shows up on that day gets the W. So I expect Texas to show up, but it's going to be a wildly fascinating game for sure.
Yeah, I am always nervous about this game. I was nervous about this game in 2005 when I went to this game, and I was 99% sure that Texas was going to play in the national championship that year before the season started, but I was still nervous about this game. It's really easy for Texas fans to have PTSD when it comes to the Red River Shootout because we just haven't performed very well, really, in the last. I mean, it's like 25 years, man. Oklahoma's. Let's be frank, they've been kicking our ass over that span at the Red River Shootout. And some of those games just disgustingly awful, bad blowouts. So Texas fans definitely have PTSD. I have PTSD for sure. And I think if you don't, you're just kind of nuts and you're just kind of beating your chest just to beat your chest on the internet. You're not really being that realistic to me. I think it's going to be a great game as well. I expect Texas to play really well. The last time Quinn had to knock the rust off against Oklahoma, I believe he went 21 for 27 for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I'll be happy to see Quinn beat the rust off like that again in the Cotton Bowl. We'll see if it comes to fruition. But let's you mentioned Arch Manning. Let's talk about Arch a little bit. Whole lot of talk about Arch, and I did not realize this, Chris. I went and looked it up. He has more pass. He has 200 more than almost 210 passing yards more than Quinn Ewers right now. And they almost have the exact same amount of attempts and the exact same amount of completions. And I believe he has one more touchdown. Arch has been killing it. I agree with you that this is Quinn's team, but how awesome is it for Texas Longhorns to have a guy like Arch Manning that can do what he can do? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches, man. I mean, it's certainly a luxury, and I think you see why a lot of folks, myself included, were saying that Texas has the best quarterback room in the country entering the 2024 season. It's got to make you excited about the future if you're a Texas fan. Certainly the present as well. If something happens, because let's face it, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, it doesn't happen again. But Quinn's been injury prone a little bit. We just saw it. He was out for a couple weeks. To have a guy like that waiting in the wings that you feel like and can come in and still win you football games and win you some big time football games. I mean, he's got the pedigree. Obviously, we don't need to go into detail on his name and his family and everything else. To have a guy like that, it's an extreme luxury for Steve Sarkisian what he's doing offensively. And Arch looked incredible. I think it couldn't have happened too, Sean, at a better time because you had some inferior competition where you're able to go out there, rack up some numbers, build some confidence. Then you kind of dare I say, ease into SEC. There's no easy SEC game, but Mississippi State, it's about as manageable as you're going to get in the conference this year. But you're able to get your feet wet against SEC competition and sort of have this slow build up. Now you go into the bye week. Quinn is back, but that valuable experience he just gained, that confidence he gained, it is invaluable going down the stretch just in case something happens to your starter. It's not like your entire season's the real. Because there's some teams out there, Sean, that if their starting quarterback goes down, their chances of winning anything significant essentially plummet. I mean, Tennessee is one of them. Like, all due respect to their guys in their room, if they lose Nico, the outlook on their season changes significantly, even with that defense, right? So to have a guy like that in your room, Sean, it's a huge positive. It's a major asset to what you're building, and it feels good knowing that even if something happens to QB1, QB2 can still take it to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is an embarrassment. I've been talking about that a lot on my show just the last few weeks. The wide receiver room is ridiculous. I mean, look at the running back room. They just keep breaking people, and another guy comes in, and they just keep getting like 5-6 yards a carry when they want to. And they're not a running. They're the most non-flashy running team you will probably ever see. Every Saturday when I watch them play, I think to myself, man, why can't we just run the football? Then I go back and rewatch the game, and I look at stats, and I'm like, wow, they actually really did run the shit out of the football. It's just not flashy. They're not breaking those long runs like a lot of these teams are. Hopefully, we'll see that. Did you see Gabe Eichardt's comments the other day about Ant Hill Jr. being the weakest link in the front seven for
I
Texas
did not.
defense?
I did not see that.
Well, it's all over Twitter. I was just curious. Basically, he said, you know who Gabe Eichard is, right? He does a
Yep.
podcast with Teddy Lehman at an All-American Center there at Oklahoma. He basically, and I say he called him out. He called him out for being the worst in the Texas front seven, and Texas fans clearly and obviously went nuts and lost their mind. I actually agree with the premise of what he's saying. Ant Hill is raw. Ant Hill misses things that he shouldn't miss. Like he gets himself out of position and usually makes up for it with speed and just his ability to pursue. And I think that's what Gabe Icard was trying to say. The reason I asked that is because I see you guys get the SEC mob spun up a little bit sometimes. It's pretty fun to watch y'all pick some really opportune times to throw some stuff out there and get Twitter going. It's good stuff. I like it. Chris, man, thanks for joining us today. Any last words before we cut you loose?
Yeah, Sean, I want to say thank you for the opportunity, man. I'm looking forward to coming to Austin. I mean, listen, I gave some pretty glowing reviews to Tuscaloosa, and we're vlogging each and every single weekend, by the way. So, sharing the experiences, dropping that on YouTube, social media, all that good stuff, and really just putting on display the places and the people and exactly where we're going and what we're doing. So, all of the stops have been incredible. Somebody asked me, how do you power rank? Was Tuscaloosa the best one? And they're all so different and unique, and like I wouldn't feel right essentially. Maybe end of season I'll be able to share like, hey man, like this experience stands out above the rest, but they've all been great in their own ways. So I know that Austin's going to be the same. I can't wait to get to Texas and throw the horns and experience everything that is Texas football. I mean, again, I've never been to Austin, Texas in my life, never experienced a Texas game or anything burnt orange for that matter. So looking forward to it. But no, yeah, like you were saying, Sean, the beauties in the banter. I believe that. We love the back and forth. Obviously, nothing personal, just having fun, talking ball, shooting the shit, man, just having a good time with it. So, if you like what you hear, we're at SECUnfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content and wherever you find Horn Takes. Also, YouTube, podcast, wherever you get those, and our website, SECUnfiltered.com. So, Sean, always a pleasure, man. It's really cool to link up with you and obviously to see both of our growth, and hope to link up with you in Austin later this season.
Absolutely. If you do go to that Kentucky game, let me know. I gave away my
That's like
tickets to that Kentucky game.
99.9%. We are
Okay.
locked. That is the game we're going to make it to for that. So
Well, I
I
was
will
hoping.
all but guarantee it right here. So
Okay, fair enough. Well, I will try my best to get down there and hook up with you and just have a beer with you, man. That'd be a good time. Show you what I can show you. I was hoping we could get you to Red River Shootout or that Georgia game because I will be at both those. But I
yeah,
get
so
it.
Red River. I'm going to LSU Ole Miss in Baton Rouge. First
That'll be a
time
good one.
experiencing Death Valley at night, and then it's funny that the Texas Georgia game. I'm going to Rocky Top for Tennessee Alabama, and third Saturday in October. I promised everyone, and I'll do it here. I am making it a point next year, no matter what the schedule is, I'm going to Red River. Just this year with the way the schedule worked out. And also, too, Texas, Georgia, I was advised by the Texas folks, hey, it's F1 weekend. You may not want to come because it is a mess getting in and out of there and trying to book a stay anywhere. And it just,
Yeah.
so I was like, we're being strategic with where we're going. Our partners over at Prize Picks are funding the trip and supporting it. But, also, too, I'll admit there's a budget, and I don't know if spending $1,000 a night on a place to stay is in the budget. So,
Yeah, and it's a grand a night if you want to stay anywhere close to downtown for
exactly.
sure. So, all right, man. Well, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Make sure you guys check them out on all the socials. Check out their website, SECunfiltered.com. Really good content. It's pretty obvious why Chris and his guys are so successful. They do a really good job talking football. They're really good on the mics, really good with all this technology and all this good stuff that sometimes I'm not so good at, but that's all right. Check them out, man. Really good stuff. Ways for people to donate to this hurricane relief. You saw the banner flashing on the screen. If you got anything you can donate, please reach out to the website that I posted on the banner, or reach out to some of the ones that Chris talked about earlier on in the show in the segment. Those people are suffering really bad, man. I saw some. I hadn't seen anything until just this morning. I saw some videos on TikTok of these folks, several different videos, filming in their house when this water is coming at their house, and pretty unbelievable. If you're sitting up in the mountains, you don't expect that much water to come at you, and some of those people have lost literally everything they have. And so, if you got something to give, give. You just got thoughts and prayers, give those as well, I suppose. It's a pleasure to have you on, Chris. It's been mess that up. See, I was just talking about the technology. Trace Texas topics, folks. This is one that I want to get serious on for a minute. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. A lot of different people call the Texas Blow You game a lot of different things. But there's only one correct way to call this game. The correct way is the Red River Shootout. Anything else is just flat out wrong. If you're calling it the Red River Rivalry, you're calling it the Red River Showdown, you're poisoned by corporate bullcrap. Or you're into political correctness, and I'm not a huge fan of political correctness. I don't know when it happened exactly. I don't know what happened exactly. As long as I can remember as a young man, young kid, this was the Red River Shootout. They said it on the broadcast. I mean, it was the Red River Shootout. And then at some point, someone got it in their head that saying Red River Shootout was offensive. And then anytime they got a sponsor, they didn't want to be offensive. So they try to make up these clever names. But let's be honest, man, they all suck. Red River Showdown, terrible. Red River Rivalry just sucks way worse than Red River Showdown. At least Red River Showdown's almost close. I mean, you can't even say Red River Rivalry. I can't. It's really hard for me to say it without trying to throw a W in the rivalry. I don't know why. It's too many R's right in a row. It's just not natural. I think it's past time we all grew the hell up and just realized we're not talking about gun violence when we say Red River Shootout. We're talking about a daggum football game. One of the most historic rivalries, one of the most heated rivalries, just so much hate. One of the most unique rivalries. In fact, it is the most unique rivalry. I don't give a damn what anybody says. The Red River Shootout is the most unique rivalry in sports. Period. If you want to argue with me, just don't even try because you won't have anything. You will not have a single argument that makes any kind of sense. Texas has Smokey the Cannon. Blow You has those weird little fake musket guns that they fire off. Their male cheerleaders are running around shooting off these little guns. The whole thing is like wrapped up in guns. A big ass cannon and a bunch of guns. Two states that are known for their guns. I actually don't know if Oklahoma's known for their guns. I certainly know that Texas is. I would assume Oklahoma got a fairly large gun population. You never know what's going to happen in this game. It's just always it's a shootout, man. And it's a Red River one. So this week I'm on like a Twitter mission. I have decided that I'm going to be annoying and correct all improper pronunciations, calling outs. I don't know exactly how to say what I'm trying to say. If you call it Red River Rivalry or you call it Red River Showdown and I see it, I'm going to correct you. And you're going to get this cool little graphic that's on the screen right here on the tweet. I don't mean no offense. But like I told somebody earlier this week when I corrected them, he said, well, that's what it was called when I was a kid, so that's what I'm going to call it. And I said, it is never too late to repent for your sins and right the wrong that you've been doing unto this game's name for so long, folks. So if I hit you with a logo and say Red River Shootout, and I hit you with the hashtag RRSO, I'm not trying to be a dick, y'all. I just want y'all to call it what it's called, what it's supposed to be called. And with that, we'll see you next Saturday at the Red River Shootout. I'm excited to get into Red River Shootout week and have a lot of conversations about the Red River Shootout. Still trying to get a time lined up to get Hardball Harge on the show. We've had him on the show for football. We've had him on the show for baseball. Really good dude. He's got a show on 1300 AM The Zone. Him and Big Mark Henry, I believe, have linked up now. Mark Henry used to be a guest of his a lot, but now I think Mark is like full-time on the show, and that's pretty cool. So, yeah, man, we are excited to start talking Red River, get really down into it next week. We'll do a show on Sunday. We'll talk some Drunk Sean thoughts. We'll talk about probably just all these games. We got a Trace Otra games coming up. We'll talk about those tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow. And we're back with another special guest. We got CJ Vogel of On Texas Football is going to come on the show tomorrow. We'll talk to Texas Longhorns 5 games into this 2024 season. We'll talk a little Red River Shootout. Then we'll do our Trace Otra games, and then we'll have our final installment of Trace Texas topics for this week. And then we'll get back to Red River Shootout week where everything will be normal. We'll be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Give us a subscribe. Give us a follow. Won't cost you guys a thing, but we sure do appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. Y'all get hooked. We're almost a week out. Almost a week out for Red River. Get hooked.